What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about DeAndre Swift and what he brings to the Chicago Bears, as well as take a deep dive into DeAndre Swift versus David Montgomery. Swift is the running back that the Lions decided not to pay, but the Bears decided to pay him. Meanwhile, David Montgomery was the running back that the Bears chose not to pay, and the Lions stepped up and paid him. To be fair, the Bears did offer David Montgomery a deal, but the Lions offered him more money and he signed in Detroit. Meanwhile, the Bears stepped up their offer for DeAndre Swift and beat out the Eagles. Today I wanted to go deep into the analytics and see the biggest differences between the two runners, as well as check out their contracts. Let's get right into it. Starting off, I wanted to compare each player. David Montgomery is 5'10", 222 pounds. He ran a 4.63 40, and he scored a 5.16 on the relative athletic score. Monty will be turning 27 years old this summer, and he has over 1,200 career touches in the NFL. Meanwhile, DeAndre Swift is 5'9", 215 pounds, and he ran a 4.48 40 and scored a 7.55 on the RAS score. Also, Swift just turned 25 years old, and he has less than 800 career touches in the NFL. So just a quick look here, both players have similar production, but Monty is a better goal line runner and pass blocker. Meanwhile, Swift is a bigger home run threat and better receiver. But looking even deeper, Swift is also faster, younger, a lot more athletic, and he has less mileage on his legs. So next up, let's take a look at both players' production over the last two seasons. Last year, both players rushed for over 1,000 yards on the ground. Monty scored twice as many touchdowns, though. Part of that was that Swift was with the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts stole a lot of touchdowns with the tush push in Philly, but overall, Monty and Swift's production was pretty similar. Going back to 2022, Monty had more rushing yards than Swift, but DeAndre has always been a better receiver out of the backfield. Both guys are decent pass blockers, but I think Montgomery's better in that area. But now let's look even further and dig in deep into the analytics for this one. First, we're going to look at yards before contact, and this is an important statistic for me and one of Monty's biggest weaknesses. He gets nearly a yard less per carry before he runs into contact with a defender. Why is this so important? To me, it's the speed that it takes for each guy to get to their destination. And we run an outside zone scheme, so especially in that system, it fits Swift so much better than Monty did. DeAndre Swift gets a full yard more before contact than Monty does, but here's the even bigger kicker. He almost gets as much yardage after contact as Monty does as well. That's really impressive. And that was my biggest issue with Monty's game in Chicago. He would break a ton of tackles, but he would almost never be able to take advantage of it because he wasn't fast enough to make the next guy miss. Even more to that point, getting yards after contact is more than just being able to break tackles and run through players. You also have to be able to avoid them and make them miss too. So when you combine broken tackles with forced missed tackles, you come up with avoided tackles. And DeAndre Swift actually avoided 2 more tackles than Monty did, and they both have an avoided tackle percentage of over 20%. So it shows you that DeAndre Swift is just as good at making people miss, avoiding, and breaking tackles as David Montgomery is. Then we get to the next category, explosive runs, and I expected Swift to dominate Monty in this category, but they actually had the exact same amount of 10-plus yard runs last year. But if we go back further and look at previous years, Monty had a much lower rate, so it looks like he kind of took advantage of Detroit's awesome offensive line. Overall, I still think DeAndre Swift is much more of a home run threat and more of an explosive runner. And then we get to the receiving aspect of it all. DeAndre Swift caught 39 passes last season, and he only had 1 drop. That is a 2.2% drop rate. DeAndre Swift has elite hands. Meanwhile, David Montgomery caught 16 passes and had 2 drops. His drop percentage came in at 9.1%, So Swift seems to have much better hands than Monty. But let's not forget that David Montgomery is a good receiver himself. So that makes me think that Swift is going to be a great receiver. And I've always seen that in his game. He's faster, he's more explosive, he's younger, he has less mileage on him, and he's more athletic. And then on top of that, he's been just as productive as Monty has for most of his career. So now let's take a look at the contracts they signed. Swift signed a 3-year deal worth $24.5 million with $15.3 million guaranteed. Meanwhile, David Montgomery signed a 3-year deal worth $18 million and just $8.75 guaranteed. At first glance, it looks pretty clear that Monty's deal was better, but there are a couple of other important factors to take into consideration here. One important note about the contracts is DeAndre Swift's was written in 2024 and David Montgomery's was written in 2023. In that time frame, the salary cap went up over $30 million. So inflation is definitely a thing here. In comparing the deals side by side, Swift's is only about $2 million a season more than Monty's deal is. So when you take that extra $30 million in cap space into account, I think it balances out and this is a pretty similar deal. But then you add in all the other factors mentioned. That DeAndre Swift is younger. He's a better fit, he's more athletic, he's faster, and he's a better receiver. And to me, it seems pretty clear that the Chicago Bears made the right decision at the running back position. And let me be clear here, it's not just because his name is Swift. I dug deep in this one, and I've always seen DeAndre Swift as a special player going all the way back to his time at Georgia. Yes, it was his name that initially caught my attention, but it was his game that I fell in love with. And still, to this day, I do not believe that DeAndre Swift has played his best football yet. This is a guy whose best football is still ahead of him, if you ask me. He's young, dynamic, explosive. He can take any carry or catch to the house. I've always been a fan of DeAndre Swift, and I think he's going to bring a new dynamic to our offense. Things are really looking up for the talent we're going to be able to put around our rookie quarterback. And the running back room is no different. Right now, we have a better three-headed monster than we had last year. DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, and Khalil Herbert. I think Swift and Roschon alone would be a pretty dynamic 1-2 punch, but Khalil Herbert is good enough to start in the NFL. There's a small possibility he could be traded, but I think we need depth at the position, and I would love to go into the season with these three guys still on the roster. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know your thoughts on the DeAndre Swift versus David Montgomery talk. We were all big fans of Monty, and I didn't make this video to take anything away from him, just that I'm a really big fan of DeAndre Swift, and I wanted to compare the two side by side. Thanks to everybody who watched. Please remember to hit that like button for me. Stay tuned, and until next time, bear down.